7 minutes past 8. Let's say good morning to Kieran Donaghy. Good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you, bud?
Yeah, we're looking forward to these games this weekend.
Yeah.
Hoping that maybe there'll be something for us in terms of surprise and a shock. Maybe we should start with the Mayo-Tip game. What are you looking, when you're sitting down to analyse this match, what are you looking for?
I suppose I'm looking for, look, Tipperary was a fantastic story, won their first Munster Championship in 85 years, but then I suppose you start dialing it into, you know, this minor team in 2011 beat a very good Dublin team. I think it was 3-9 to 14 points. So you're trying to analyse, you know, there's a lot of winners in that group that have a taste of All Ireland and they'd love to try and get back to a final. So, you know, where can they hurt? Mayo is a big one for this Tipperary group, and look, obviously, I think a huge platform that they got against Cork was the middle of the field, and I think, you know, the access point, I would say, of Liam Casey, who kicked 2 points against Limerick, who kicked a goal against Clare, and who got 2 points against Cork as well the last day. His rampaging runs around the middle of the field will be crucial to them. Stephen O'Brien was solid against Cork. I think there's actually more in him. I think he can be more dominant. I think he'll have to be more dominant against this Mayo team. He'll have to use that 6'5" frame and his size to be a bully around there and really test the Mayo midfield. And I also think then Colin O'Riordan coming out as your third kind of midfield option, who will pick him up for Mayo, etc., will be huge, because if they win that middle of the field, and considering they went long an awful lot against Cork, you know, and both teams did in the Munster final. I think there was 71% of the kickouts were long, and in the Connacht final, I think 66% of the kickouts were long. So with all that ball coming out to the middle, whoever can dominate the airwaves is a huge part of it, because both teams actually have a fantastic half-back line. If you look at Mayo with Paddy Durcan and Owen McLaughlin and Cohn, and maybe even Keegan might be more out there the next day if he goes and picks up Mikey Quinlivan, even though I think they'll put him on Sweeney. And then obviously you've Maher and Fahy and Robbie Kiley on the half-back line for Tip. So you've got these two very dynamic half-back lines that love to attack and that love to go down the pitch, but they're no good to you if you're not winning the middle of the field. So whoever can win the middle of the field, give that half-back line access to go forward, will have a major bearing on who wins the game, because both teams have lethal forwards inside, as we've seen in the Munster final. Sweeney and Quinlivan had 12 points between them, 6 from play. So that's going to be a huge factor in it. And then you have obviously Cillian O'Connor. And if Mayo can win that access, they can leave Aidan O'Shea inside full forward, which I think has a lot of ramifications for Tipperary if Aidan O'Shea can stay inside. One, Jimmy Feehan is going to have to stay back in there on him. He'd much prefer if Aidan O'Shea leaked out to the middle of the field. He's a natural half-back. He'd go out with him. He'd probably try and run off Aidan as much as he could and get Aidan chasing rather than influencing the game. Whereas if Mayo are winning the access in the middle of the field, Durcan and McLaughlin, these guys are bombing forward. No, you've that danger for Tipperary, which they didn't face at all against Cork. And I was very surprised Cork didn't go with Mark Keane when it clearly wasn't working for them the other way. And when Luke Connolly went off, I thought the game was screaming to build on the confidence that Mark Keane had built with that massive goal against Kerry, and that you go long into him. But, you know, I think if Mayo can put it long into Aidan O'Shea against a guy that's a more natural halfback, even though he's been playing well at fullback, and he's well up for a fight, like he's dogged, Feehan is dogged, he's been around a good few years. So that's going to be a major kind of access point. And then you obviously have the X factor in Colin O'Riordan.
It doesn't feel to me like this is a Tipperary team that are going to be overawed by the occasion, given that so many of them have come through successful underage teams, and it's not like they've come straight from success at underage into success at senior. They've had to claw their way to this point. So I don't see them being a letdown. I can't see them conceding a couple of early goals and throwing the towel in and this being one-way traffic, which means they're going to be in this match. And so all of a sudden we're looking at Mayo and going, okay, so I see the spine of the old stagers who are there, but these young lads, they are as yet unproven despite the high praise that we've seen for them.
Yeah, it may be so. But in fairness, all they can prove is what they've done to date, and what they've done to date has been really strong. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to push on. I think a big one is what they do with Quinlivan and Sweeney, and what Mayo do to counteract those two. I suppose for me, if I was sitting down in the Tipperary backroom, or if I was sitting down in the Mayo backroom today, and I was looking at the danger men for Tip, and I was trying to figure out a way that I could really go at them, it would probably be by putting Lee Keegan and Sweeney, and absolutely giving them a green light to go and attack as much as possible and bring him away out the pitch and away from goals. You saw against Cork, the dream scenario. He was allowed to stay in. Shanley didn't go forward at all. He was allowed to go over and back across the D. He's lethal when he wins ball. He's lethal on the turn. I don't know how lethal he is at tracking 17, 80 yards after Lee Keegan, and giving Keegan a green light to maybe add to McLaughlin and Paddy Durkin and telling Stephen Cohen to sit would be a big one for me. And I'd actually possibly look at, I think Quinlivan is their best all-around player, and he's their bit of magic, as we saw super points he got in the Munster final. He's a ball player. You know, he can set up play, he can come on to scores, he can kick frees if you need him to. And that's a huge player that you also have to look at. So maybe an Oisin Mullen on him, and absolutely going the other way as well and giving him a green light to go, and tell your Chris Barrett and your Cohen, no matter what happens when we get a ball, lads, ye hold the fort, and see if Mayo can get Tipperary dragging Sweeney and Quinlivan back the pitch, tracking and tackling, that even if they just go up there, even if there's a turnover from Mayo, Tipperary don't have that kind of lethal kind of transition game and then hitting Quinlivan and Sweeney. And if Mayo can take that away from them, Cork never posed that threat. So I would say, if I was Mayo, that's what I'd be looking at, to try and take the two. How can you make Tipperary's two most lethal players as uncomfortable as possible? And that would be a way that I'd look at it.
For Tipperary, do they just insist to the two lads, if you get picked up, don't go horsing back. You're going to have to hand that responsibility off to somebody else, because if you get exhausted, the game is over.
Yeah, it's perfect answer it's perfect answer, Ger, to be honest with you, but it's just a bit harder to execute, to tell two fellas to not go the way the game has gone, the way both teams are transitioning up and down the pitch. I think it's a little harder just to say to someone not track him, because if you leave Oisin Mullen and Lee Keegan come at 100 miles an hour, you know, through the middle, and it's fine to say, oh, somebody else is supposed to pick them up. When they pop over a point or two, you don't be long seeing Sweeney say, hold on a minute here, no, I'm not having this in my watching an All-Ireland semi-final. My man's not going kicking 2 or 3 points, and he's kind of, you know, adamant about it.
There was, just on that, right, because there was, Arthur wrote this amazing, wild piece comparing the late stage of Beethoven with the Limerick hurlers, and there was a brilliant bit of analysis of the Limerick hurlers about how their defenders are not selfish, in that they don't mind if their man scores a point, but they understand that the need for the greater good means that you're going to have to perform as part of a collective, and so therefore they're not giving up goals. So essentially, if there's a one-on-one situation developing, the selfish defender will stay with his man and leave the goalkeeper one-on-one, because you know that if you go, your man's going to get the pass and he scores the goal and it comes up on your stats, whereas actually, you need Tipperary to be at that point where they trust each other, and where they've been in the games where you're handing off Lee Keegan to somebody and the communication is good enough to hand him off, and you're at a point where you trust it, and also that you're not going to get blamed if Lee Keegan finishes with 3 points. You know, that's the bit.
You're 100%, Ger. And look, they have the X factor out there in Colin O'Riordan to, you know, and the legs for him to cover all over the place. Such a dynamic player. My man of the match the last day. Was targeted with 4 huge kickouts later on, won each and every one of them clean above everybody in the air. Magnificent kind of athleticism. His passing all day was ridiculous. It was spot on for a guy who hadn't played much football, obviously. You know, every heads-up play, moving the ball through the lines. You know, you could really see the Aussie rules in them. The minute they get it and they get out into space, it's head up and can I kick? And something that we should be encouraging more and more out of our players, especially on the pitches like Parky Queeve and Croke Park, where a bounce pass into the chest, if the forward's out in front, is hard to stop. And defensively, you know, was maybe overlooked in what he did against Cork, where he was, where the level of communication he had, the hands he was getting, the touches, the deflections, getting around people, helping people. As you rightly say, covering for Sweeney and Quinlivan. So that's your perfect world scenario, and that's what you'll be hoping, and that's what Tipperary will be hoping, that Colin O'Riordan is the guy that picks up. But if he's been picked up by Paddy Durkinger, and he's trying to help, and it's difficult. I've been there. I've been the guy inside, not wanting to be out around the middle of the field, but you just have to go in the modern game. Sometimes you can't leave your men outnumbered. It's fine to say somebody else will pick them up, but if somebody else is a man, then there's nobody to pick them up. So it's about realising where you are, and it's about realising the situation in the game. And yes, Sweeney could jog out at some stage and see another Mayo guy back there, and then pass him on. And communication is very important in that. But if Sweeney goes out with Keegan and there's nobody around to pass him out to, he can't pass him on to fresh air. He'll have to go with him. So that's where that breaks down, and that's where the forward, the Sweeney or Dick Quinlivan's kind of says, Jesus, you know what? Look, I gotta go. And if Mayo are in that situation, they'll be happy on Sunday evening.
Is there a blueprint, Kieran, for where those players should be at the vast majority of times? Like, I guess if you get into the idea of formations here, it seems that it's 14 men behind the ball without it, and then it's a two-man full forward line when you have the ball. Is that what every team is playing at the moment, basically?
Yeah, that's what most teams are playing. And I suppose from being at games and covering them with off the ball, and even Sky, you see it from a bird's eye view. Dublin are the best at getting bodies back into the forward line on a turnover. Look, it's well documented that they have the high press, and they showed that against Meath, and it was very effective when they get up in your face and take away options. And a big thing they have is they don't get beat up there, so they don't allow the overlap to happen. If you notice, they always stay at 1.5 yards in front of the guy with the ball, so it's making it hard for him to get his head up. He's worried about taking you on. He's more than likely a defender, and even a full back line defender, which may not be as comfortable on the ball as your guys out the pitch. And they stay that perfect distance away. They never really jump in at the wrong time. A big thing I think that Dublin have mastered, and I think it's so important in the GAA, and it's a big thing in basketball in many respects, is when do you tackle? It's fine to have the gusto to go out and want to tackle and want to get turnovers, but that can actually be silly, and it can actually cost you if you tackle at the wrong area of the pitch, in the wrong position in the pitch, at the wrong time. So knowing where to tackle, knowing how to tackle, knowing what direction you want to push them in, having everybody else tight behind you. Dublin have executed that press phenomenally well, but they're equally adaptable into, if that's beaten or somebody does beat it, they go into this retreat that we saw many times during the Laois and Westmeath game, and not so much against Meath. They weren't really needed to go there, but against Meath, they tackled and really pushed up because the scoreboard allowed them to do that. They were up so much earlier on in the game. You can take chances, you can push up, you can go for the juggler. If they get out past you, you're not overly worried because you're so far ahead. Against Westmeath, at one stage, they had all 14 outfield players in behind the 45, and they're equally adaptable at being very dangerous at doing that. But they are the best at getting people from that scenario up to the top end of the pitch. And if you get people up to the top end of the pitch quickly, it gives you that out ball, and it allows guys to carry to the middle of the field and try and get their head up. And I saw numerous times Rock against Westmeath. No, in particular, I was at the game in Portlaoise. Rock, Con, Kilkenny, seeing a turnover happen or develop and just turning and sprinting up the pitch and extending the pitch to allow guys space to come into, but also making sure that they have a threat. I remember Pat Shea, when he came in with Kerry, he had a big thing with us: get to the 6-yard box on a turnover. If you're an inside guy and you've gone out and tackled and you get a turnover, get to the 6-yard box, as in get into the small square and then turn and make your run off of that. Or if your man gets lazy as you're going in, give him a shove and push out off him. So look, that is, whether Tipperary have the legs and the fitness to do that, to the effect that Dublin have, who are the best at obviously doing it. You saw it with Kerry too as well. At a lot of times, Tony Brosnan and David Clifford were 60, 70 yards from goal. We'd get a turnover, and it's hard. It's such a hard thing to do when you're back there, because you've tackled and you've worked really hard to get back there, and now you're expected to not only go and get up the pitch, but to then turn around and start getting on ball and start having the legs to do that. That's probably 60, another 60, 120 yards, then a run for a ball. That's 130, 140 yards running flat out, which is not easy.
No, I'd say that was the end of you, was it?
Yeah, exactly. It used to be great, Jar, when the ball used to go over the bar and you used to just kind of have time to even celebrate a pint and then go out and stand in the 21 and then kick it out and turn around and jog back into the square and wait for it to come in. It was really enjoyable.
You would still be doing that.
Enjoyable.
Yeah. It sounds like you're leaning towards Mayo in a relatively close game, that you just think they've got more than Tip do at this stage.
I just like, you know, I kind of, it's harder for me to call because I'd like to see both teams win. I'd love it'd be a great story for Tipperary. I'd like for this Mayo group to get another crack at the final. And you know, Tip did have a huge day in the sun. 85 years is remarkable, and them fellas will go down in the annals of Tipperary football, and they will come and they will bring a show, and they will bring energy and gusto, and they're not afraid, these boys. As I said, they've minor, they've under 21 success, Munster success, and minor All Ireland success, and you know, you've guys professionally playing down with Sydney who reach for the stars on a constant basis, so they will come. But I think Mayo's bench is something we haven't talked about. Maybe the benches, maybe Mayo have a small bit more on the bench side, and I think it will be tight for a lot of the game. And I think Mayo by 3 or 4, just with their kind of experience and their heads, they're experienced. A few old guys around there will try and steer this Mayo team to a win and have the legs of the Mullins and the McLaughlins and we haven't even talked about, you know, Tommy Conroy and Cillian O'Connor being, you know, if they can keep Aidan O'Shea inside and Tommy Goals and Cillian O'Connor fed with ball by winning the midfield and giving their dynamic half back line with Keegan the chance to go and express themselves, with the bench should see them through, I feel.
Okay, if you're Cavan this week, if you were in Cavan this week, would you have made a bigger deal out of the venue and tried to use that as a distraction, as a rallying cry, or would that have been something that provokes the Dublin beast? How would you have handled that whole thing?
There's no, don't worry, the Dublin beast is continuously provoked, because that's the type of team they are. They're all fighting for places and they're going to devour you one way or the other. I think they possibly missed the trick. You know, there was a bit of, look, we want to play in Croke Park, and in my eyes I'd be saying I want to win an All-Ireland semi-final and try and get into a final. So what's my best play here? My best play is to try and bring it to a ground that is tighter. You saw what they did to Donaghy in the athletic grounds in Armagh, a tight pitch. They hunted in packs. They were, we were talking to Tommy last night, and he was making the point that they were almost like Tyrone in 03 against Kerry. They were just, running around, getting hands on, getting bodies on. And, maybe, look, we won't show fear by saying we don't want it on in Croker, but, the fact is they should be probably scared that it's on in Croker and that this Dublin team are a completely different animal. This is a major, major step up for this Cavan group. They've done extraordinarily well in the last 2 years under Mickey Graham, and to get to this point, but don't make any mistake about it. They are entering the Lions' den here, and you know how Lions stalk their prey. They pounce, they use their strength, and they go for the jugular, and that's what this Dublin team, go and do. And look, that'll be it's a big difference to be running around and tackling in packs on a athletic grounds pitch that's in November, or that's taken a good bit of rain over the last few months, versus being on the crisp, fresh surface of Croke Park, where Dublin are just so at home, and their kicking ability is unrivaled inside in Croke Park, because they obviously play there more than anybody. So they know the posts. There's a big thing in that. When we used to play in Killarney, I used to always love playing in Killarney over playing in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, because I just knew you train, you play so many games there, county championship games, etc. You know the place, and you know what way the wind goes, and what way you have to kick certain kicks into the position. So they may have maybe missed the trick. I get why they didn't do it, but I think I would have been leaning for the possibly just trying to get them out of there. Look, obviously you couldn't do that in any normal year, but this isn't a normal year. This is COVID-19. This is restrictions. This is no crowds at the game. So I probably would have made.
Maybe we have to do this in a normal year, where Dublin don't have home advantage in All Ireland semi-finals every year nailed on. It is kind of ridiculous.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you on the semi-final stage. I think there's more of there maybe Leinster Championship games, if they get a draw, that you know, they should be probably on the road. But look, it doesn't really matter to Dublin. Dublin had played on like Dublin don't care where it's on. Which
I know,
to me,
but the rest of the country does, because like that point you make about Killarney, like is right. The Dubs do know that ground better than everybody else, and like in every sport in the world, home advantage is something that you fight for. In basketball, you fight for your home court in the best of seven, or in the NFL. The only
we've talked about this. We've talked about this on
shot clock.
On shot clock, Ger, what how important it is, and how many game sevens have been won on the road in major American sports, and it's not too many. And what an All-Ireland final is in many respects is a game seven for Dublin. They have more fans. They know the place. They're playing at home, so it is an advantage. But you know, I think for Cavan, I think maybe trying to get him out of there might have given them a better chance to win the game. I get why they want to play him there, but that's all well and good, and the bravado of it's fine. But when you step up and you all of a sudden start seeing the strength, the power and the speed of this Dublin group, and how fluid they are and how accurate they are with their passing, how their forwards get out in front every time, how they're probably the most underrated, not underrated because that's wrong, that's silly. They've just such a specialist full back line with Fitzsimons and Davy Byrne and these fellas. They're athletic, they pull and drag out of you, they're super fast, they're super strong, and they're very good at what they do, and they have no real interest in doing anything else, only nullifying you and marking you out of it. So they have all the X factor down there, and it is a big thing. I was reading Eamon O'Donoghue's piece last week, and they're on about the kickouts and that scenario. Like, in Cavan went long 14 times against Donegal in the Ulster final. They won 7, which is 50%, and they scored 1-2 out of it. And they were saying he made a very good point that Donegal won 21 out of 24 of their kickouts, going short an awful lot of the time, but only scored 3 points off it. But if you give Dublin that type of possession in a wide open, expansive Croke Park, where getting bodies back around the ball is a lot harder, you know, they could decorate you with that amount of ball, and that's what Cavan. I don't know. Cavan are going to have to do something about that. They can't give Stephen Cluxton all them easy kickouts, and they can't hope to get back. There's been lots of teams have gone up against Dublin in recent years and tried to put a kind of defensive structure in place and sit back. They're just, you know, the work they've done over the years with Jim Gavin, the work that Desi has probably tried to do in his limited time, but you know, even Mark Ingle. The stuff they've done against that packed defence and how to unlock it and where the spaces are and backdoor cuts, you know, that defensive blanket doesn't work against this Dublin team. It stifled them. Jim McGuinness stifled them in 2011. He pulled one over their eyes in 2014, and they haven't lost a game there since. So every team has gone at them different ways, and you know, it is hard to see how Cavan are going to. They're going to have to win middle of the field. It's probably a big thing they're going to have to do, and that's going to be hard.
It's the biggest, one of the biggest shocks that we can ever remember if they manage to pull it off. Their 14-point underdogs. I did want to just mention one last thing at the end here. The Peter Keane situation in Kerry. Colm Keys was reporting on Saturday in The Independent that a meeting of the players did take place, and there are reports that the county executive want him to freshen up his backroom team. I think, like, there's probably the Dubs and Kerry exist in a very rarefied atmosphere where rumours sweep WhatsApp and social media quicker than any other sports teams in the country. Maybe the Irish rugby team or World Cup are at that level as well. And Paul Ganey put his fake news Donald Trump tweet out, and I think Mark O'Shea was rubbishing the stuff that had been on as well. But there's mood music around this management and the backroom team at the moment. What's your understanding of where things are at, and do they just need to freshen up somebody in the backroom team to say, yeah, grand, fair enough, that's done, and move on?
It's a hard one because, you know, I think going back even to Donny Buckley coming in, I don't overly think he was a pick of Peter Keane. I think it was a move to try and add this very good coach that was above in Mayo, making them really one of the best tackling forward units in the country, and the pressure that they were putting on. And I think Kerry looked at getting them, and that didn't work out. So I think bringing somebody in, you know, it would very have to be much if Peter Keane wants one, or if Peter Keane sees somebody that he feels can add something to the setup. I don't think you can kind of force somebody on a group or on a management team. Do Kerry need somebody? Possibly. I would say it would do no harm if it was the right person. But, you know, the WhatsApp stuff, and it is frustrating. And you know, you saw Darren O'Sullivan's stuff yesterday, and I'd echo it. It's frustrating for a Kerry person, a past Kerry player, when you see these people around you, maybe inside in the office and work. There was two fellas came into me with the phones. Oh, do you hear this going on? And I'm like, really, lads? Are we really going down the road of believing everything? It's such a dangerous, I'm telling you, I wrote about it in my book, it's a dangerous tool, this WhatsApp. It's so easy to start something fake on it, Ger. It's so easy to put something together, put it out there. And we all have to take a look at ourselves, what we get and what we pass on to other people. We have to take a real look at ourselves. And it's only, you know, it's somebody else's lives that we're talking about on a more serious matter. Yes, it's a bit of gossip, it's a bit of jargon and you know, but there was players mentioned in that WhatsApp message that I know the caliber of guys. And yes, I hope they did go at the management inside in that meeting. I hope they did demand more. I hope they did lay down the law from the players' side of it and say, we need A, B, and C, or we feel like we could do A, B, and C better. Because these guys, both management and players, put their lives on hold to represent Kerry and try and do as best as possible for the county. They know themselves that no matter what Peter Keane or the management could have done below Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I still said after that game, a lot of that sat with the players in their performance. And you know, and yes, a lot of it sat with the management and the way they were set up and the way they were told to go out and play. So, you know, everybody should have been taking responsibility at that meeting. I hope the management challenged the players to, you know, bring more in a knockout game, bring more edge, bring more tenacity. You know, don't back down. You know, get really at it. If you're going to be representing Kerry, every game should be like your last game if you've the green and gold on. So go at it and do your best as you can. And we'll try and do more to set us up better, to have us in a better position. I hope that conversation was both ways in this meeting. And if it was, and there was stuff cleared out, it can only be good for Kerry. But the stuff that comes out when people hear there's a meeting, all it takes is one guy to put a WhatsApp message together. He could make up absolutely anything he wants. And he can send it on to 10 of his groups. And the 10 groups will send it on to another 100 people, and 100 people will send it to 1,000 people, and it just spreads like wildfire around the place, and complete bullshit at the end of the day. So it's very frustrating for a team, and very frustrating, I would imagine, for players like Paul Geaney and David Moran, who were mentioned in that, who would never do anything like that. Who, if they had an issue, they would say it straight up to the management, and the management could chop them down or agree with them or say, yeah, we'll go work on it. But not this vote and all this, that doesn't happen in Kerry, and it's very frustrating to see, very frustrating for the players and very frustrating for Peter Keane, because, you know, yeah, he look at himself and he know he got a lot of things wrong, and maybe he look at freshening things up. But, you know, the disappointment level in that dressing room after that game would have been catastrophic for that group. You know, to go down to a Munster semi-final with Cork, be very fancy to win. Cork not overly being a great team. You know, when we were losing to Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh back in the day, they were the second or third best team in the country. And yeah, you got clipped down there every once in a while, and you went home and you had the meetings. I've been in the meetings in the Hayfield Manor. I've been in the meetings in the dressing rooms in Killarney. There's paint coming off the walls, and we're challenging Jack O'Connor, and we're challenging everybody, and he's challenging us, and there's a bit of fireworks, and that's very good and very healthy for a group. What do you do to fix the problem? Do you sit down and say nothing and go talking behind each other's backs? Or do you address the issues, go straight to the point, and go toe to toe and try and come to some sort of agreement on how you're going to bring this thing forward? And I hope that happened in Kerry, and if it did, it can do nothing but help the team going forward.
Yeah, fair enough. Kieran, good.